What's up, YouTube? I got some of the mongrels out here. Hopefully they'll behave. Hopefully they won't cut up too bad. So, what's today's video about? So I wanted to kind of talk about my benefits of using rainwater uh, versus city water. Now, I can't speak for well water. I actually would probably categorize well water. I'm sorry, I'm swatting mosquitoes off of Iris out here. The mosquitoes like her too. But anyway, yeah, I would classify well water as very similar to rainwater because it doesn't have, or at least it shouldn't have the chlorine and stuff that city water would have. But I cannot speak for personal experience on well water because I have not used it personally for my garden. So I can't really speak on it. I kind of want to dig myself a shallow well on my property. But that's a whole nother story. I've been thinking about that for a while. But anyway, so let me tell y'all this. When I first started gardening, I didn't know anything about blight or powdery mildew or any of those things. But I quickly found out after I started gardening what all that was, because I'd come outside and my plants would have powdery mildew. I'd have blight on my tomatoes or potatoes or whatever. And at that time I was watering with city water with a water hose. And at first I didn't pay attention to if I was I was getting the leaves wet. I didn't really know at first. And then once I found out they recommend don't really get your leaves and stuff all that wet. After that, I started, and by the way, I got some new glasses. Anyway, if y'all want me to do a video on the glasses, I got like 4 pair, for $100 and something. If y'all want me to do, for those other blind people or people that just like glasses, let me know if you want me to do a video on the glasses. Because I think a lot of people really don't know there are better ways to get glasses outside of vision insurance. Because I don't have vision insurance anymore because it was absolutely pointless. But if you want me to do a video on the glasses and all that stuff, let me know. And I'll talk about that there. But back to the water. I was watering with a watering hose, getting the leaves wet. I found out I don't really get the leaves wet. So I paid attention to just water at the ground. Don't get the leaves wet. Whatever. I still was having blight issues. Still was having powdery mildew issues. So it wasn't until probably that was my first year gardening. My second year gardening, I said, okay. And I also ran my water bill up a ridiculous amount, which was terrible. Because at that time I had less resources, let's call them. So, yeah. So I was like, I got to figure out something. So I had a window unit air conditioner, and it dripped a lot of water. And I was like, I'm going to catch this water, and I'm going to test it and see if this water will be all right to water my plants. Because, I had heard all these things about, the water coming out of the air conditioner, it's acidic, or it's this, it's that. Generally, it's not. I've found all the water that I've tested that comes out of various air conditioners has actually been fine to use. There's nothing in it that would hurt you or your plants. So I put a bucket under it and started catching that water. But it wasn't that much water because it was only a window unit. But I was able to water like this one little section of my garden. And I want y'all to look at this real quick. Can y'all see this? Look at how Chris looking at his sister. They so crazy. Anyway, so I was like, okay. I can water this little section of my garden. That'll save me a little bit of money. So I started watering this one particular section of my garden. And that's all I could water before that water would run out. So I did that, and I was like, okay. All of a sudden, these plants don't have blight, and they don't have powdery mildew, and they don't have my other stuff I'm watering with the hose does. So I'm like, okay. And at the time, it's still not dawning on me because I don't really have a means to do anything else. So I think this was a year when I first started gardening in the fall and the winter. And I didn't water anything because around here, you don't really have to water anything in the fall and the winter. It's cool enough and it rains enough to where it doesn't require you to really water. I can't think of the last time I watered in the fall or the winter. I just let stuff go. So, I started noticing, like, none of my stuff in the wintertime has blight or powdery mildew. But I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe it's got something to do with the heat. Because it's not as warm, it's colder. And things like that. Fungus and stuff doesn't really like to grow when it's cold. Okay. So finally, years and years go on. I fight that. I come here, and over 95% of my watering is with rainwater. Because I have enough barrels to catch enough water to use predominantly rainwater. And I noticed since I've been here, and I've been here going on 5 years, I've never had blight. I've never had powdery mildew. Never. And I don't worry about if I get my leaves wet. I don't worry about if dirt splashes up onto my plants. I don't worry about any of those things. And one day I sat down and I said, let me figure out what am I doing differently that I wasn't doing there. First of all, there I had a vermicompost. I started my vermicompost in my previous, where I lived previously. And I did it there the same way I do it here. I just have more here. I had it in a actually I didn't even have it in a trash can then. I took chicken wire and like put it in a cylinder, like I was making you know how people make tomato cages out of cattle panels or something like that, but I used chicken wire. And I put it in a circle like that, tied it together where it would stay together on the one side, and I just started putting my kitchen waste in there, you know, anything, vegetables or fruits or, you know, all that kind of stuff. I also would put grass clippings and stuff like that in it. And at first I was just letting it break down on its own, and then I bought like a few worms, a few red wigglers, put that in there, and then when I put the red wigglers in there, they were really eating it up fast. So then after that, I was using a little bit of that compost, but I wasn't making that much. I was making a very small amount compared to what I make here. And even here, I still feel like I'm not making enough, because oftentimes I run out, and I'm like, I need to go to the store and see if there's any busted bags for me to buy on clearance. So if you're ever doubting that your compost situation is too big, I would love to see what you're doing, because I can't get enough compost around here, especially when I keep expanding. Because when you talk about filling these beds, you'll be surprised at how quick that goes. Because like right now I'm out of charcoal. I need some more charcoal. I cannot expand until I burn all that stuff I have back there to burn, turn that into charcoal, and I have compost to mix with it, and then by that time I'll have enough worm castings to mix with it. And if I need to add to that my favorite way, additive would be cocoa coir. That's probably my favorite to add with it. But yeah, so anyway, I nailed down that while I was here, I was doing something totally different. I was making most of my soils. So I'm getting soils that are rich in worm castings, rich in just organic matter. I'm not buying these bags of soil from the store, because back then I didn't really have that much money, so I had to buy the cheapest stuff. And the cheapest stuff is trash, y'all. It's absolute trash. It's mostly rocks and sticks, and it's trash. And I didn't have a whole lot of money to amend my soils back then either. So I would fertilize, but as far as rock dust and different things like that, now I don't use a ton of rock dust now, but I do add it. When I first make a bed, I'll add it. After that, I don't really worry about it too much. I mean, I may let years go by before I might add a little more, but usually I find that those minerals will stay in your soil for a while. So also what I was doing here was no hose water. I immediately was using rainwater almost 100% of the time. The only time I do not use rainwater, we have periods where we go through droughts. I don't want to say drought, but we'll go 2, 3, 4 weeks, no rain. Or when you do get rain, it's just a little bitty shower and it's not enough to fill your rain barrels. So, in those periods, which I've learned to do something a little bit different. At first, I would just be like, I ain't got enough water. I got to use my hose. And that's another thing. When I moved here, I made sure that when my air conditioning system was set up, because it's a brand new air conditioning system, when I moved in, the one I had was very inefficient, and I refused to pay a $400 light bill when I should only be paying about $75 for the light bill. That damn old inefficient air conditioners. I'm telling you, please, if you own your home, save your money, and if you have an air conditioning system that's over, I'm going to say 8 years, replace it. And watch what your light bill will do. People be talking about getting windows, doing all this stuff. I'm telling you, it's your freaking air conditioner. It's inefficient. Air conditioning technology has gone through the roof since then. You can get so much more efficient units. Yes, if you get better windows, etc. And I'm not going to talk about windows and all that. If you want me to talk about energy efficiency, if you want to hear me talk about that, go over to my DIY channel where I talk about this house, which is a huge project behind me. So y'all don't laugh at me like over here. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. I'm telling you, when it's done, it's going to be gorgeous. But right now, it looks like crap. But, you know, I bought an old house. It's a labor of love. Anyway, but yes. New windows is a scam, and like I said, if you want to know more about that, I plan to do a video to get into that on my DIY channel. New windows are a freaking scam. Do not believe what they tell you about new windows, that they're so much more efficient. They're lying to you. And I know this both in personal experience and just, you know, really researching and looking at some things. But Iris, Iris is being belligerent. People are having fun and she doesn't like it. She wants to be in control of everything. No laughter, no joy. But yeah, so I was like, when I had my air conditioning unit put in, I told them, I said, hey, the condensation that comes off this unit, I want it, you know, make it to where I can I catch it? He was like, yeah, I'm going to run the pipe. It's going to go outside. If you don't catch it, it's going to hit the ground. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he put the pipe where the pipe runs outside. Well, I catch all the condensation from my air conditioning unit. And every day it gives me, on a pretty good humid day, which is pretty humid here, I get about 30 gallons of water out of it. And keep in mind, that condensation, that is not water that your air conditioner actually makes. That is moisture from the air that condenses on the cold coil. So that water is actually just water that came out of the air. So there's nothing extra in that water. There's no chemicals in that water. That is not water that the air conditioning unit actually makes. That is simply, it's just like we have a cold glass of whatever you might be drinking. If it's hot outside or it's warm in the room or whatever, you see the condensation form on the outside of the glass. That glass did not make that water. That is water that is in the air that once it got cool, instead of it being vapor, it turned back into liquid on the side of that glass. That is the same thing that your air conditioning does when air passes over the very cold coils that cools the air that then comes into your home, your car. Both of them work the same. So I was like, when I found out I could catch 30-something gallons, you know, so the 30 gallons, it can water about half my garden. So when my barrels get low, I have no choice but to go to the hose. At first I was using just straight hose, but then I said, okay, well, if my barrels are low, what I need to do is take the water hose and fill up one of the barrels with the water hose. Let it sit overnight. Why am I doing that? I'm doing that so that I can allow the chlorine to evaporate out of the water. If you don't know, chlorine is naturally at its stable state is a gas. It doesn't want to be in a liquid state. They simply pump that chlorine into the water to make sure that it kills, chlorine is basically bleach. So they pump the chlorine into the water to make sure that it kills pathogens that may be in your pipes once it leaves the treatment facility all the way to your house. That's what the chlorine is for. But when you let water sit, if you ever notice, you'll see little air bubbles coming up. That's not air. That's chlorine. It's evaporating out of the water. So if you want to do the experiment, sit some water on a table and watch it. And watch how you'll start seeing little air bubbles at the bottom. And then they'll eventually rise up. That's the chlorine evaporating out of the water. So that's what I do now if I have to use hose water. Why did I start doing that? Because I started saying to myself, chlorine. It's basically bleach, right? So I'm basically taking bleach or very dilute bleach water and watering my plants. Well, what does bleach do? Kills microbes, bacteria, basically. So I'm taking this and I'm putting it in soils that I'm building with all this healthy bacteria. And know this, that chlorine is not selective. Let me not say bleach, but chlorine is not selective in what bacteria it kills. It doesn't kill the bad ones and leave the good ones. No, that's not how that works. Chlorine just kills bacteria, period. So when you're watering your soils with the hose, it's killing the good bacteria too. And if you're getting any of that on your leaves, there are actually good bacteria that are on the leaves that generally will make it not hospitable for bad things to grow, like powdery mildew, different fungi like that. It's just like on your body. Your hands have certain enzymes and things. And don't go too far. I'm not telling you to not wash your hands, but what I'm saying is, there are enzymes on your hands that actually, if you wash your hands too much, and this means them people on them shows like My Strange Life, like they got them OCD conditions where they wash their hands like every 2 seconds, but then you wonder why they're sick all the time, because they're actually washing the good enzymes off their hands, enzymes that actually kill bad bacteria. It's the same thing on your plants. On the leaves of your plants, there is various microbes that keep things in check. And when you use this chlorine and you make a very sterile environment on these leaves, I let me use the word sterile lightly, because it's not like hospital sterilization type sterile, but you get what I'm saying. You're killing most of the good bacteria. And then when the bad ones come in, they're like, oh snap, we can live here now. And you get a lot of those issues. I believe that, and don't get me wrong, this is not like something that I've just like scientifically is proof. But this is what I'm hypothesizing that's going on. The same thing with blight. I think the same thing, you're watering your soils and the chlorine is killing a lot of the good bacteria and things like that. So it gives a place for the bad stuff like the blight and all that stuff to live in your soils and splash back onto your plants and cause all these diseases and stuff. So, and this is a hypothesis just based on just me paying attention, because I promise you, when the rain barrels would get low and I would go back to watering with the hose, I would start seeing blight. I would start seeing powdery mildew. I would start seeing all that stuff. And I was like, oh, what in the world? Now, if you're using any kind of distilled water or something, I'm not talking about that, because distilled water has been boiled. It doesn't have, chlorine and all that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about usually city water. Most city water is going to be the same. It's going to have some chlorine and fluoride and other things in it as well. So, yeah, I just wanted to throw this video out there and tell y'all my experience with that and why I'm so pro rainwater. If you can, use rainwater. If you can't, get a barrel of some sort and fill it up with hose water. Let it sit overnight and try to let that chlorine and stuff evaporate out of it if you can, if it's not too much hassle. Or if you just want to run an experiment, get a 5-gallon bucket, fill it up with the hose, let the chlorine evaporate out of it, and use that to water just a few of your plants, not all of them. And I would say the target plants that you typically have blight and powdery mildew issues with, and see if it changes. Do that for some months, because you can't do it for like a week and then make a definitive conclusion. And experiment with them plants. If you start using that method and the blight and all that and powdery mildew and stuff goes away, go back to using water how you used water before and see if it comes back. If it comes back and then you go back to either rainwater or, you know, the water that you letting sit and you letting all that stuff evaporate out, then it goes away again. That should be a good indicator to you that you probably found a lot of your issues. And I just want to put that out there because I see a lot of people battling with blight and all that, and I don't have them issues. Like, I got a bottle of stuff, organic fungicide stuff back there. I've been had it for about 2 years. It probably ain't no good no more. And I bought it because it was like $1. The regular price was like $10. They marked it down to $1. And y'all know my cheapskate behind. I'm like, oh, let me get this. I probably don't even ever let me get, you know. I haven't even used it. I mean, and a lot of people are like, oh, you need to thin out your tomatoes for the airflow. And I'll never do that. I'll never have blight, never have powdery mildew, never have those issues. So, y'all give it a try and see. Like I said, this is just my hypothesis. This is just what I think is happening. Having a halfway decent grasp of how science and things like that work. If any of this didn't make sense to you, tell me in the comments and I'll try to clear it up. But I tried to keep it as, you know, layman's terms as I could. I tried to keep it, you know. I don't want to nerd out too far on y'all. But yeah, it's hot today, y'all. I watered this morning, but my garden's not looking. I don't think I watered this side enough. But anyway, it's all right. The sun's about to go down, and it'll get a break, and then the stuff will perk back up. But yeah, I just wanted to talk to y'all about that. And yeah, till next time. See you guys later.